from the Built Right?
Oh, yeah, he's aggressive.
He's aggressive.
He wants to do everything on time.
He wants to do it his way or the highway. Their budgets are created from the top with no input. And would you say, Arb? Demanding. Now, are all those really bad traits? You know how everything that's got a strength can also have a weakness? You know, as a manager, if he's not demanding, who's going to be? But, you know, it's really the tone in which this is done. It's the attitude, the atmosphere. And it will be interesting to see what unfolds with our Built Right friend. Information and communication. The process of identifying, capturing, and exchanging information in a fashion that's timely in order to achieve the objectives, and then a company monitoring those internal controls. So that's what we want to look at as an auditor. We want to go in there and see what kind of controls are in place here. How are they running? Risk assessment involves the identification and analysis of the risks of material misstatements in the financial reports. Guys, think of this. We aren't required to find every misstatement. We are required to find a material misstatement. So the whole reason we're even focusing on internal controls isn't because we feel good about it. Well, it's something that Sarbanes-Oxley has required us to do now. But we're specifically looking at internal controls because if we don't find a material misstatement, our liability skyrockets, right? And of course, our job is to find a material misstatement. Our opinion says that there's reasonable assurance the financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP and that, you know, there are no material misstatements that exist. Internal controls are a definite paramount method in which if we can trust those controls, then we have a better likelihood that we can trust the processes in recording the financial statements. Now, wow, failure to identify risks can result in deficiencies in the control process. Controls are our friend here, aren't they, guys? Risk assessment questionnaires used to identify the significant risks related to financial reporting and the documentation. So what are they looking at? We're going to go into a company. We want to look at those values. You know, are they filled with ethics? Do they have a sense of doing the right thing? Do they have integrity in their work? Who could define the word integrity? What do you think of when you think of integrity?
Doing the right thing when nobody's looking.
Wow, that's a good one. Doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And you do the right thing because you're looking. Do you know what I'm saying? It matters to you as a person. Board of Directors and the Audit Committee. Who are on these committees? What's their character like? What's the operating style of management? Are they like Enron, where they kick the top? They reduce the workload or the workforce by 10% a year to keep that competitive nature high? What's that going to do for an environment? Commitment to financial reporting competence. They really want to take the time and make sure these transactions are being recorded and reported correctly. Organizational structure. How is the authority lines? How are those authority lines set up? Are they constantly being revised and worked? HR policies and practices. You know, what are the expectations as to being an employee in this company? Okay, so those are basically guidelines that an auditor might ask people to fill out questionnaires so they can gain an overall understanding of this potential assessment of potential issues. So control activities, policies and procedures that not just are in place but get implemented, that are truly in operation across the organization. Designing controls and operating controls. We care about this because we want our transactions to be recorded right. Because ultimately, we want to make sure that these transaction statements ultimately get presented in the financial statements as they really should be. A couple other things that we'll want to look at when we see controls. Who's preparing the adjusting entries? Who creates the accounting estimates of uncollectibles? Estimates are a tricky thing, guys, because they truly are just estimates. But are they accurate? Would they fairly suggest the operations in place? Things we'll look at. Information and communication represent the processes for gathering information. It needs to be communicated to the right people, and it needs, if there are potential issues, are they getting dealt with accordingly? So, what lines are in place for effective communication? Any questions so far? I'm kind of just rumbling. Do you guys have any questions? Are you following me? Are you bored? Would you tell me if you were bored, Arbery?
Probably not.
You gotta love the guy. Okay, monitoring. Monitoring is just a follow-up on it, okay? Represents a company's processes to kind of check to make sure the internal controls are operating efficiently or effectively. And what happens is we keep monitoring them to see if any time stuff slips through the cracks. And internal auditing is basically a monitoring process. The internal auditors inside the company are only there to make sure that the internal controls are operating effectively. Did people sign off, the right people sign off on approving checks? How about inventory? Was there a proper count of the physical inventory that came in? All of our processes are in place to be assured that our processes of controls are working effectively. Can you guys think of another type of internal control process that goes on?
Didn't they mention about IT?
Tell me about IT. Well, IT, that's, information technology, are there guidelines in place that only certain people have access to certain information, right? Is it protected?
I can't believe how much they went into it. The authorization and then
Who's authorized? I mean, guys, and as companies become so much bigger, all the more of an importance to make sure these internal controls are operating. So, as we move on, some of the control activities that we are going to look at, one of the biggest ones is segregation of duties. Segregation of duties means that a specific person is responsible for specific actions, okay? What is an example of a segregation of duty in an accounting department? Can you guys think of something? Anybody? Karen? Yes, Kimberly?
the person who collects the money, the other person has to count it, another one's got to deposit it.
Exactly. Or another example, there's usually a department for accounts payable, and they're usually separate from the accounts receivable, aren't they? Authorization procedures. What kind of authorization procedures need to happen here?
Passwords to get into certain things.
Passwords into certain things? What if I want to get reimbursed for something?
You gotta turn in the receipt.
But do I just turn in the receipt? Does someone need to approve it, authorize it and approve it and sign off on it? And do those processes actually happen? Does accounting just write the check, or does accounting follow the guidelines in place that they're making sure that it went through the right channels? Physical controls, adequately documenting transaction trails. Are we sure that what we're paying in inventory, so we show that inventory came in? Are we sure that what I'm showing on the invoice matches what we actually received? Do we have the paperwork to substantiate what came in? Who signed off on it? Does that match with what we created as a purchase order, with what we were going to pay for the items? Does that make sense? The transaction paper trail? Physical controls to safeguard assets. What do we do for physical controls here?
Lock things up.
Lock things up. Sometimes have cameras. You know, we've got to. Why do we do these things? Trust but verify. Verify, verify. And you know, it doesn't hurt anybody to have those controls in place to keep everyone honest. Then we are going to reconcile certain control accounts in the accounting department with the various ledgers and to make sure that everything balances accordingly. So we're going to do checks and cross checks. And ultimately, all this sounds great, but unless you have people that can really carry it out, it's not going to happen. So we need to hire the appropriate people in order for this to work effectively. Computer controls are important, and basically know that the safeguarding of all that information and access to that information is a critical piece in IT. As far as Sarbanes-Oxley, they have required now that management